healthcare operation. Yeah, but I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Hey everyone, Jim Cooper. I represent our water business at Arcadis. Let's see, my background, I've been in the water industry for over 20 years. Started out as a water wastewater system operator. So definitely come from the operations perspective, utility manager, and of course now but at Arcadis for about 20 years. I currently chair the AI committee for AWA and have been implementing AI before it was. So my first project I think was 12 or 13 years ago. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, hi, I'm Tara Robinson. I'm with Valley County Water District. I've been there for just about 21 years. I oversee water treatment, water loss, water conservation, some other waters fall under me also. And our AI journey has started pretty recently, and it's mostly my focus has been to track down water loss.
My name is Joe Yersky. I'm with Valley County Water District as well. I've been in the water industry close to 20 years now. I started when I was like 17 as a high school intern. I was mostly in the field for like 13 years and then came to Valley County about 5 years ago, doing more administrative work and doing a lot more analysis on meter data and doing a lot of conservation efforts. So I'm kind of like the catch-all. I'll even do some IT here and there, video work, public outreach. So this is my AI has kind of been my new task, and it's been pretty fun lately. So we're here to share it.
Thanks. And online, Keaton, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Keaton Clay. I'm actually based here in Georgia, just north of the city of Atlanta. But we do projects all over the country, so happy to join y'all today. My background is in water loss. So I've got certifications through the AWWA in controlling non-revenue water, and then I sit on the Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee, Kentucky boards for water loss. So excited to be here with y'all today.
Thank you. James.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm with Crescenta Valley Water District. We're a water and wastewater agency serving about 36,000 in LA County. So specifically, we're talking about La Crescenta, La Cañada, Montrose, and parts of Glendale. I'm the general manager here. I've been with the agency for 8 years too in my current role, coming up through administration and finance. And, we characterize ourselves as small but mighty, and just proud to be part of the team here and part of the broader community, like with the Data Collaborative.
Thanks. Lauren.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren Steely. I'm a data scientist with the Metropolitan Water District. I've been here for about almost 10 years. And I'm part of a team that works on special projects and studies, some related to urban water conservation within our service area, others related to agricultural water use outside of our service area. So very happy to be here.
Thanks. And Rui.
Thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruhi Tusi. I actually have two ventures. The initial one being environmental consulting, Apex Environmental and Water Resources, with over 10 years of experience providing environmental regulatory compliance to public agencies. But recently, we have started a new venture, Apex Engineering AI, and I co-founded that with former NASA AI and machine learning engineers who have a lot of experience with machine learning for earth sciences problems. I'm also a board member for Groundwater Resources Association of California, and happy to be here. I personally believe it is our evolutionary responsibility to create a greater consciousness, one that has access to all available data and makes the best decision in that time. And I'm very happy to be here to talk about that evolutionary path and how does it look like for our industry.
Hey, thank you so much. So the way we're going to work this webinar, we're going to have James and then Joe and Tara and then Lauren, and each of them is going to share one or two of the AI projects they're working on, why they chose to do it, how they're doing it, and then pose some questions to our panelists on how they can improve their process, or just, some ideas on how to make it better, or the challenges that they're facing. In the meantime, if you have questions, for all the members that are here, folks in the room, raise your hand, but if you're online, if you want to put your questions, or if you have solutions too, put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring that as part of the entire webinar. So with that, I'm gonna kick it off to you, James.
All right, thanks, Kim. And by the way, I'm probably the most of a generalist here amongst my colleagues, at least on the agency side. So thanks for your understanding. So I'll just share a little bit about our journey, a couple of use cases, and maybe some challenges. And I would say that our journey was born out of the intersection between desperation and luck. So the desperation part is we had planned to move to what's called a budget-based rate structure, and we had planned it for about 18 months. So this is different than kind of your more standard inclining tier structure, and it's really complicated. And so the first thing we did was make sure that our customer service utility system and our billing software would work. I mean, that was the first check mark, and we got assurances and all that stuff. So we're like, okay, great. About 16 months in, well, by the way, we'll call them Acme. So about 16 months in, we're working with Acme, and we're finding out that the integration department is just some combination of either not cooperative or not having the technical sufficiency to integrate APIs appropriately and just make it happen. So in the meantime, we're also, because we're ambitious, implementing AMI, and we're doing it in-house, and we had these temporary workers. So as is my habit, I take new employees to lunch, and I just ask them, hey, why are you here? What are your strengths? What do you want to do? Things like that. And this guy, his name is David, lets me know that he is a data scientist and machine learning specialist. And I was like, you don't say. We might have an opportunity to align your interests and strengths with something we really, really need here. So we repositioned once AMI was done. And basically what happened was he just used Python. He used code to allow Acme to work with our new bills going on. That's trying to be part of the conversation here. And it all worked out, saved the day, and we were able to implement budget-based billing. So the value is we got a foundational project done that had been in the works for a long time. We saved probably a ton of time and money. I don't know, I can't quite quantify that. I'm sure it's a lot. And probably the biggest value is we discovered, hey, going in this direction might actually work. So our next use case was right after that, and it didn't take very long. It actually took like 3 hours. So with AMI, we still needed to reread meters in the beginning because we had unexplained variances. And what that looks like is just the stack of printed PDFs. You got to manually pour through, highlight, do calculations in your head. And so we automated that process again using Python, and we probably saved about a quarter of an FTE's time. And we can now redirect that toward building models to better harness the new AMI data that we have. So we've now moved on to 2 other use cases. The first one has to do with customer service still. And it's about, so with VoIP, you guys are probably familiar, we use GoToMeeting. There's a native function that actually records all the calls and translates them into transcripts. And that's great. But for our purposes, the data isn't organized in a way that can sensibly add to a customer profile, because we want to build out a more robust 360 profile for, so we can better serve them, customer segmentation and the like. And it's also a lot of data to store. So again, using Python to kind of tailor it to us. And so to this point, it's mostly using code to make things work for us. This next use case, we're actually starting to get into machine learning. So not proud to say this, but we didn't have a centralized work order system, and we're implementing one right now. And as we go down this road, we're finding, we actually need to document our workflows, which we don't have either. And the beauty in this situation and a beauty and challenge is there's already AI agents out there that do this. So we're using code to tailor the agent's output to the district. And ultimately, where machine learning comes into play is the system can learn the district and how we operate, how we feel, what are roles and responsibilities, what is our org chart. And so each workflow becomes more efficient, each iteration becomes more accurate. So we're right in the middle of that as we speak. And going into the future, our ambition is to look at two primary things. It's to optimize our water pumping plan, which with two purposes. So the first one is we can minimize our pressure spikes. So that's good for minimizing leaks and things like that. And we should be able to save a ton of energy, a cost on energy. So, and then the second one is developing a leak detection program, which would pair with a condition assessment program. So for example, catching leaks before they happen and understanding the true life of a pipe. So if something's rated for 75 years, but the assessment says, hey, it can go 90, then we probably don't want to replace it immediately. So again, this will likely move the needle the most in terms of savings. But a question for us is whether to go with vendors, because there are vendors that are increasingly entering the space. And it also introduces the first challenge. So I want to move on to challenges, which is, with all these new technologies and vendors, how do we know which one to go with? Because obviously there's a big sunk costs and switching costs and all that kind of stuff. In terms of other challenges, I think what we're encountering are the same challenges across the board. So you hear a lot of people talking about, well, what should our AI policy be? Cybersecurity is a challenge navigating it. We need to make sure, obviously, that we're protected. So we had a big speed bump for about a month where we had to go and get trained and get a few certifications for things like Microsoft Azure. I mentioned the selection of AI agents is a challenge. And another one is moving from a development environment to an implementation or go live environment. So for example, in our instance, our guy David that I mentioned, he's a developer. So we don't have the other side of the house. We do, which is a closed loop environment. But if we were to adopt this at an agency-wide scale, or even want to share it with other agencies, I don't know how to get there. So, and fortunately, we haven't had to cross that bridge yet, but I'm sure that we will at some point in the near future. And finally, this is probably more of an opportunity than a challenge, but we were lucky in terms of somebody was right under our nose and they were ready to go. But our agency, and I imagine a lot of agencies our size, we don't have the resources to go out and suddenly hire a whole new FTE for this. So probably an opportunity out there is some sort of shared resource, amongst agencies or something along those lines. So that's a little bit about where we started and where we're at and where we're looking. So thank you, and I'll pass back to you, Kim.
Yeah, thanks, James. Those were great case uses, and I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of questions on how you did this from our group. I don't know, do you guys want to touch on policy first? That seems like, how should agencies be using policy, using AI? Are there any, standards out there or regulations that we should know about, in regards to that? I don't know, James?
Sure, right. Yeah, I can start. The answer is yes to all of that. Most people are not aware that most states in the US at the point have laws on the use of AI. Particularly, a number of states have really specific laws on the use of AI for critical infrastructure. That's considered a high-risk application. So you definitely need to have a policy, right? And the policy isn't practical today for the policy to be don't use AI, right? Because people are going to use it, right? You can't really avoid that. So it's really critical to have a policy. And then there's a lot that gets into that. Actually, AWWA is working on a policy statement right now for application of AI on utilities. It's just establishing basic guide rails, right? Things you should and should not do, beware of privacy. But there's a lot that goes into the policy side, so, yeah.
Bridget or?
I don't have any to add. I know that a lot of utilities are, establishing their own policy just to bounce off of what Jim just said. A lot of that's driven by state regulation. Rumi or?
Yeah, I would like to add something here. So AI is so new and things are changing really fast. And I suggest that agencies should start thinking about internally. What are your goals? What you want to achieve and what you want to allow your employees to utilize it for. And one of the concepts that we provide to our clients is data dictionary. And that is a very good starting point for agencies to start evaluating your data that you already have, see what is missing, define all the terms, and make it unified, make it as a guideline for all your staff to utilize the same language, same wording, same definition, same field when they collecting data in their Excel form. And in terms of security, of course, there's so many solutions these days, and you can develop your tools internally in a closed loop environment that you can use these engines of AIs and LLMs and tools that are out there, but you're not sending your data out there. You're actually calling out on their brain to come and analyze your data. So that would help a lot with the security aspect of things.
One more thing to add too. This is about AI, right? It's really important whenever you're talking about AI to define what you're actually talking about, right? If you say AI, that could mean anything. That could mean, if you're a Microsoft shop, that could mean using Copilot to search and find files. Or it could mean automating chemical dosing in a water plant, right? Two very different applications, very different risks, but it's all AI. So the policy, you need to really think about what's possible. To Roshi's point, it's rapidly evolving, right? So I think when you develop policy, when you look at regs, it should be under the assumption that you could use AI in anything that you do.
Keaton, do you have anything you want to add?
Not necessarily on the policy side. If we kind of address some of James's challenges, if that's okay, if I kind of shift that direction, because that's kind of one of the questions at Oldcastle we wanted to answer. And just a tiny little background on Oldcastle, our histories in the pipe and precast space and stormwater retention and wastewater solutions, but never really in the technology space. And how we've kind of branched into it and utilizing AI is we've gone out and said, hey, instead of forcing utilities to do all these large scale pilot studies, and each individual utility does pilot studies, spends a bunch of money to do them, brings in a bunch of technologies, what if we put in all the legwork and then just bring in the best in class partners and bring those solutions hopefully kind of unified as, hey, here's everything AI for a utility to use. And we've hopefully done enough legwork that we can vouch for some different vendors. So VODA is a great example. Bridget's in the room with y'all today. They're one of our newest partners because they're the best in class, head and shoulders above really everyone in the predictive space right now. So predictive risk modeling, VODA's crushing. And so we brought them on. But I am in kind of this weird space where now I'm kind of partnered with them. So I would say, don't trust me. And I know I kind of mentioned this in our kind of pre-call, but trust people like Jim, right? He's in the room with you today. This is what he does, right? He's got an Arcadis, trust the consultants, right? If you're going to implement large scale use of AI into your utility, go to somebody who has a background in AI. Rui on the call today, right? Utilize those people because they don't necessarily have a vested interest in myself or Oldcastle or in VODA or in any other vendor. They want to bring you the best solutions in class. So let them be that third party verification. Let them say, hey, I've worked with these folks before and their technology is great. I would say that's probably the first place to start. a lot of decision making, and we're talking about shifting like to AI decision making. Well, the first piece of that is being able to relinquish some of those things that you want to make all the decisions, because when we're shifting to AI, we're trying to shift the decision making there. So you got to take a step back and say, I'm going to shift some of this decision making to a consultant who knows the AI industry really well, and they'll help me make really sound decisions on who to bring in. So those of you lucky enough to be in the room, and again, Jim, I don't know you personally, but spend some time talking to Jim afterwards, because this is what he does, right? There's not a better person to talk to, according to the AWWA right now, more qualified than Jim.
I'll just use AI to get all the answers.
And I'll even open up to, Tara and Joe and Lauren, inside versus outside. Have you, how did you decide if you were gonna do it in-house or use a vendor or both? Well, we went and talked to our interns and nobody had a degree in AI like James. We had to work with what we had accessible to us, which is Grok and ChatGPT, to be quite honest. That's what was in front of us to start. And for us, the journey is not so much how to get AI to work for us, but how to learn how to interact with AI and to train AI to figure out what it is that we need it to give us, if that makes sense. It's almost backwards or counterintuitive. So right now, we're still just using those programs, but we are talking to our IT to get a walled AI system in our district. So I don't know if anybody else had something to, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just gonna, we have big dreams and big hopes and wants, but how to implement that, we don't know. Like, we've literally been dealing with this maybe 5-6 months.
Yeah.
Literally, our general manager went to a conference and said, there's all this AI talk, figure out how to use it, and that's pretty much what we did. We're like the two that they're like, hey, just figure it out. So, and then we really don't know what we're doing to a certain degree. We're very cautious. We're making sure not to give too much personal information and being very cautious in that aspect. But yeah, we kind of just delved on like the data analytics side of it. One thing that we used it for recently, or we just recently did a rate increase or rate change. Not increases, but anyway, so it was really going to affect our top water users. And a lot of our top water users is our school districts. So we implemented it in July and we met with them in June. So we just grabbed their old May bill. We fed Grok all of our new rates and and it just analyzed it and just spat out what pretty much what the May bill was and what it's gonna be. So we gave them actual real data and compared it to what the new rates would have been. So that was kind of cool to do and have it spit out in a matter of, like, I think we were like 30 minutes from the meeting. We just kind of thought of that idea. I'm like, yeah, let's just have it do it. And it just ran out of a page, and it was really kind of transparent and easy for them to understand. And, because you could just tell them, oh yeah, it's going to go up, but they don't really know how much. So that was really I think a really fun application that we used it for.
But there was no real privacy issues. I don't know if you want us to go ahead and talk about our projects or if you
I
want.
think we had a few more items that.
Sure.
that
Oh,
James
sorry, was
wanted-
I jumping in too much?
All good. No.
I thought we're good.
I had one thing I wanted to kind of circle back on both of those things with James. I think, the biggest thing is whether you go with a vendor or do something in-house is scoping like what your primary goal is and what the end goal. And then understanding, which it sounds like you've done a lot of that work already, is what are my steps I can take to achieve and get many wins and successes through that process and that program. And then deciding at which point to start incorporating other vendors in, whether, a certain subset of what you're doing is better served by a vendor versus keeping that in-house, just to kind of get that together.
Kim, if I may add a couple of points here. And I agree with everything that was mentioned, and I actually very much a big cheerleader for VODA and startups like VODA that bring in a lot of new solutions for our industry. And I would offer that our agencies should be open to piloting and be open to trying new things that we haven't done before. As Bridget mentioned, scope it out. Define your goals and start playing around, see what's going to work out, because it's uncharted territory, it's new, and things are changing really fast. And another thing I would mention is that it also requires a new outlook in our industry and changing the business model that we have. When all of our big firms are, and every firm basically is operating on a time and material basis, promoting efficiency with that business model is difficult. And when a consultant wants to define more times, spend more time, not wants to, but it is a natural behavior that when the time and material comes to the picture, we tend to take our time to deliver something. So bringing AI into the picture has to improve the efficiency and the business model that we have in our industry.
And I'll just add one more thing, if that's okay, Kim. We're kind of at the point in the water industry where AI is kind of either adapt or get left behind. I mean, there were conversations, 10, 15, 20 years ago that was like, I'm just not really sure if my utility is ready to look into AMI, right? Like, I don't know that having a computer tell me the meter reads versus a guy going out is the better way. Now we look back and we're like, every utility should have AMI or be working towards that budget-wise. We're there with AI. We have enough data. We understand it well enough. It's only progressing. And the solutions that are being brought forward are fairly trustworthy for the most part. Again, do your due diligence. But I think we are at that place where, from a utility standpoint, if you're like, I just don't know if I can trust AI, you're going to get left in the past at this point.
Yeah, so that brings up then one of the questions that you had, James, is now that we're ready for AI, which application should we choose? How do we know which one's the right fit? Anybody want to take that?
Develop your own.
Fastest win is my opinion to prove to your team. So you can get little wins and build that momentum with the group, within your organization. So that would be my perspective, is how can you get the most value for it, whether it's in improving, metering or understanding billing, or, pipe replacement, leak detection. I mean, there's other various applications for that purpose.
So maybe just to add, I'm going to sort of answer the question, but expand a bit. So imagine that we're all sitting here and it's the 1800s, right? And if we need to see a doctor, there's one doctor, it's a generalist, right? And he addresses everything, got medicine for anything you need. Today, it's not the case, right? You might have a doctor, but then there's all these specialists, right, that focus on very specific things. That's where we are with AI, right? When ChatGPT came out, it was a generalist. People were asking it to write poems, people were can do anything. That's not the case today for AI, right? The whole data science is a science for a reason, right? So even if you're just using a large language model, that's great. But there's a lot to unpack on what you get out of that model, how you tune that model. There are all these different aspects that once you, in my opinion, once you start to explore what's possible with AI, that's fantastic. You can do pilots, you can see things. The next step is then, okay, well, what specifics do we need to fine tune that? And then, as James mentioned, a bigger effort is how do you take pilots and make them full scale, enterprise-wide, right? And that's something a lot of utilities are at that point today, and there's a lot of steps around that. And you hear topics like data governance and data structuring, and honestly, that effort is way bigger. And probably the largest portion of an AI project is that effort, getting all the data structure, getting all the privacy, getting all the cybersecurity, getting all that set up. And then you're like, oh, well, then we just press a button and AI runs. So there's a lot around getting it set up to go from pilots on someone's computer to enterprise-wide.
Is there some kind of directory of AI for water use cases? Anybody have that? Is AWA?
Yes, actually, Amber Baylor from SOCWA, South Orange County Wastewater Authority, she put together a list of all the AI solutions for water agencies, and that list has a lot of companies like VODA And it's very well reputed. I highly recommend that. If I can find the link, I'll put it in the chat.
Awesome, thanks.
I'll add on maybe one thought on that. So, I get asked the question, and I knew it was gonna come up in this call. What are the use cases for AI, right? And I turn it around, you already know where I'm going, right? That's like saying, what are the use cases for the internet? Well, yeah, you use it for everything we do today in the water sector. We're in the exact same spot already in AI, right? And you may not be there, you may not be using the internet to, I don't know, do something, but other people are. So just, it's truly, it's this circle, right, of, well, where can we use it? Well, you can use it anywhere. Well, give us specifics. Well, then it comes back to what Bridget was saying is, okay, well, it comes down to what do you want to achieve? What are the specific tasks you have? And then figuring out, okay, what's the alignment of what's out there in AI? Does that make sense to connect and use AI for that tool? You can use AI today to answer a basic math problem, right? I certainly hope you don't, but you can, right? So it's that fit of where can it answer things and do things that you can't do with the tools you have today.
All right. James, did we answer most of your questions, or do you still have a few?
Yeah, I believe that and more. And Keaton, by the way, I trust any person who has a swagger to wear that kind of shirt. So just out there to look at you.
Awesome.
I appreciate that, James. I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I'd love to turn it over to Tara and Joe if you want to share your story.
Sure, I'll start off. So when our general manager asked us to investigate AI, what we started with was just Chat GPT. Basically rewriting things for reviews, you know, just the basic sorts of things. And then we decided that we were going to try and use AI in everything that we do all day, just to get used to it, right? Just to understand how it works a little bit better and how to get it to do what we need. I've been trying to tackle water loss. That's close to my heart. And one of the things I realized is we really needed to do sort of an audit of our billing system to make sure that there weren't necessarily any large data handling errors, because we did a major water meter replacement project, actually all of our water meters, in the last 5 years. And there can be data entry errors when you're doing that many work orders at a time. So one of the things that I did was I gave it the information on how our rate codes are set up. So for example, for us, BR1 would be B for Baldwin Park, a city that we serve, R is residential, and 1 is a 3/4 inch meter. And we asked it to take the rate codes and match it to the meter signs. Do you see anything that contradicts in our database between these two? And it pulled up 2 or 3. Then we gave it the number of dials that size meter should have. So I'm learning from Joe, he's got a lot of experience with meters. So let's say four dials for a 3/4 inch meter. Then we had it go through and check the number of dials for every entry to see if that corresponded accurately to the meter code and the billing rate code. Things like that, just going through and finding some errors. We were able to find 2 meters that did not have the correct number of dials in the billing system. And when the meter would have rolled over, we would have lost a lot of revenue. So it's not a lot in numbers, but it could have meant a lot of water loss to us. So even 1 or 2 errors like that we caught, it would take, I'm sure you know, how many hours it would take to try and just have someone go through and look at those records like that. So that's been a big help, and it happens very quickly. One of the challenges that we've had is that we have to put it on confidential. We have an account, we put it on private. So when we put information in and we remove the customer's account numbers, you know, we know the basics of the security. When we work with Grok or ChatGPT for hours and hours and hours, and we get to a point where, okay, this is great, we need to pick this back up, it won't remember because it's on private mode. So we learn to ask it, can you print out your own prompt or give us a prompt to feed back in so that we can start this project where we left off? then we then save that prompt on a Word document in our files online so that we can always go back and refer to it or share it maybe with another water district that wants to do a project like ours. Another project that we do, yesterday I put our whole admin code in and asked it to tell us if there are any places in our administrative code where we're not in compliance with labor laws, California laws, federal laws, and got a nice little summary for someone to go and check, some recommendations. Just things like that. We have a big meter project that we're very excited about. I'm gonna kind of kick it off and let Joe take it over. But we're hunting water loss. So what we wanted to do, since we've changed so many meters, we have the meter consumption going back to like 2012, maybe 2016. And we can look monthly at all that meter consumption through all of the years. And then when the meter was changed, the read goes to 0. And then the new meter kicks in and it shows how much water should have been registering all that time. So Joe has trained it on specifically 2-inch meters. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so we kind of just narrowed down, let's just work on 2-inch meters because those ones kind of had a big dip. We actually had to do an initial survey on our 2 inches just to see the difference of like the average read compared to what the read is now. And it kind of gave us like a starting point. I think we had like maybe like 15 or 20
That were
meters
significant.
that were significant.
Really
So we've just kind of laser focused on 20 meters. And I was digging back old data, old consumption data, and then I fed it all to it. And so you could see like the average use before was maybe 20, 30 units. And then as soon as we put the new meter in, it's like 200-300. So it was failing by quite a bit. And then we also fed it the old rate codes and all the rate codes we've ever had in the district and had it kind of calculate, okay, what was that dollar amount? What was the difference of the dollar amount? And how much money / water have we lost? And one meter was losing us like $12,000, $13,000 a year. So it's kind of cool just to compile all this data and kind of realize how important it is to monitor our large meters or 2-inch meters. And then also we're kind of monitoring it to see, right, I lost my train of thought.
We have a meter test stand, so
Yes.
we're about to put the meter test stand into service. So one of the things we're gonna do is as we test the new meters, we're gonna take that data and feed it in. So now it's tracking our new meters to see when they start to under register. Since now we've taught it how to recognize when the meter is under registering, figure out how much revenue we lost per year and how much water we lost per year based on the rates at that time in 2012 or 2016, whatever it was. And then we are going to have it, we believe, predict when those meters, almost like an odometer reading, right? A 2-inch meter is probably gonna fail at about this consumption. And have it predict when those meters are going to fail. And then my ultimate goal is to have Grok then give us a projected budget of how many meters exactly to replace, well, close to exactly, how many meters we should be replacing based on the current consumption at what year each of those meters will need to be replaced going into the future, which we can hand in and say, here's our capital improvements budget, our meter replacement budget for the next 5 years. And that's a better way to predict it than the way I've been predicting or we've been predicting, which is let's just do, 1,000 every 6 months. You just kind of throwing out a number, how much money do we have? How much do the meters cost? So hopefully we're going to be using the data to predict the meter failure in the future and budget for it.
We also taught it like ETOs and stuff like that too, because and you're constantly refining the list. Because at first it just kind of gave us, it literally took like the average and it just gave it throughout the whole months. And it really wasn't a proper representation. So we said, look at the ETOs, look at the weather patterns for those individual. I mean, you could get really granular in it. You could tell it, look up that specific year, that specific month, how much rainfall do we have? And, curve that for the usage. And it kind of curved it based off the weather patterns as well. So I'm pretty confident that it's pretty accurate how much water we were losing for each month when it was failing.
And going back to challenges, one of the problems is we'll get really deep in it. We think we've got it, right? We're ready to do it on a large scale. And then it hallucinates our water rates. It just goes, I just can't figure it out. It does fine on 1, it does great on 10, we get to 20, it's working. All of a sudden it just doesn't make any sense anymore. And we're not quite sure how to go back and figure out where it went wrong. We had it print our water rates, the history of our water rates, and that's correct. So we don't understand what happened. So we go back and then feed an old prompt in before it went haywire. But we're really not quite sure how to figure out what happened and when we went off of the rail. I think those are, do you have any other challenges, Joe?
I think it's just being able to talk to our system privately. That's my big
Yeah.
thing, because we're just kind of printing out long reports and it's just frustrating because taking out certain data, it's a long, sometimes it takes longer just to set up the report than to feed it and actually do the work. So just having like an enclosed system that talks to our data, our AMI data, having a KPI or API talk to it where it's secure, we don't have, you just ask it a question, ask it a meter, and it can just pull up that information. Sounds pretty sweet. But we have no idea how to even really start that. We talked to our IT company to build us a system, but I don't even know what to do after that. Like, we're really kind of,
Yeah.
we're just kind of dealing with just the tools that are kind of available, like ChatGPT and Grok. So, and I'm sure there's better, more sophisticated ways to use it and secure.
So who wants to take that? Yeah.
Tara and Joe are.
Hold on 1 second, Rue. We just have one question in the audience.
So, I am you 5-6 months ago, right? We were hanging out at a party, I nod and smile, yeah, but not actually be able to understand what you're saying. Are you working inside Excel and using it, or are you feeding like Excel into?
Feeding Excel spreadsheets
Into it.
Okay, and then if you had, cause you guys are kind of like really going down the road, but like, if you could tell yourself 4 or 5 months ago when you first started, best way to learn, I'm guessing you've YouTubed a lot of stuff.
Just using it, honestly, getting used to prompting it and how to ask it, being really specific with prompts, I feel would be best. But just like Tara said, we just use it in everything, just little mundane tasks, just use it. We had a smoothie day and I just kind of asked it like, hey, we have a smoothie, can you make it this and that? And it gave me, and then spat out all the ingredients. I'm like, okay, here's my smoothie. So it's like just
But
little
then
stuff
it
like this.
created a poster for Smoothie Day and it couldn't get it to remove a comma out of the picture. You know, it's like,
Oh, I can't spell.
yeah.
It named it H2 Oasis, which I love the name, but it had H2 comma O. I'm like, you see that comma up there? It's like, yeah, remove it. Okay, doesn't do it. Like, you're not helping.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah.
Awesome. Rui, go ahead.
I think what you guys are doing is great, and I admire you for starting in this path and then trying around. But some of the challenges you mentioned is actually prompted us to develop a tool and a platform that we think is going to be the solution for that. And if you don't mind, I'll share my screen real quick to show you what I'm thinking about and what I'm talking about. If you go to our website and search for Launch Chat Doc, you can get a guest access to it. And basically, this is exactly what you were describing here, because you can have all of your internal data and documentation connected to these GPTs, Grok, or whatever engine or brain you want to utilize from. And all of your data is secure in a closed loop system, and the analysis is done internally. And another thing I wanted to mention, and I think Lauren is going to be talking a lot about it later on, is RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which will enhance the accuracy of the information and the data that you're asking the questions from. What you're doing right now requires a lot of QA/QC. You have to review all your data and the outputs and make sure it's accurate. But you can embed all of those processes of QA/QC internally into your platform. So it is done behind the scene. When you get the answer, you have more trust on what you're getting out of it. And also, you don't have to recreate your prompts, regenerate your prompts every time and go through the process the entire time, because you define it one time. You have these blocks of predetermined prompts. You just click on it and everything happens for you right there. And also, RAG is not the final answer. There's we can talk about it more, and I can show you some more examples. But There are newer technologies, RAG, agentic RAG, which basically you're defining different RAG agents that one of them goes parse the data, one of them reviews it, one of them scores it, and you have QA, QC on top of each other with these agents, with these agentic AIs that review their own work, and then they spit out what you need to see out of it. These are some of the ideas, and of course there's a knowledge graph that I can discuss about that a little bit later on, but that improves the level of accuracy and removes the hallucination, but again at the same time it slows down your process and requires a lot of power and data analysis. But in general, there's a lot of potential for what you're doing, and if you're doing it on a daily basis in your ChatGPT or Grok, you can definitely write some Python codes, as James was mentioning, and implement some RAG to enhance your answers and make that workflow an automated thing, so you don't have to do it every time.
I think the other kind of struggle is having the proper training as well, because you say, yeah, I can just do that, but I really don't know how, and I'm willing to learn, and that's kind of what brought us here. Actually, I reached out to Kim and Chris, kind of if you guys had some guidance or knew any training for AI, and you guys pulled us over here on the expert panel. And that seems to be very common, because we just want more guidance and help to learn how to do this, and we don't really.
Silly question, have you?
Oh, go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna, have you used ChatGPT or Grok or anything to say, how can I remove hallucinations? How can I use this for different ways or anything?
No.
That's
No.
a great.
No, but it's a great idea. It didn't even occur to us. That's the weird thing, is like, that's why we're trying to use it in everything that we do. Because as we use it, we understand it better. Does that make sense? It's like we communicate with it better and get a better idea of what it can do, what we can ask it, but it didn't even occur to us to ask it how to reduce hallucinations. But Joe's gonna do that Monday morning.
One on kind of hallucinations, the one kind of weird workaround, and Jim or Rui can probably speak to why this happens, but ChatGPT and Grok both really like, for some reason, if you give it like a personality to kind of take on and work underneath. So when I'm working with something and you'll say it's processing this data really good, and then all of a sudden I get to a point and it starts to hallucinate or it starts to put out bad data, and it's the same data it's been working with. So what I say to the chatbot, and again, this works for me, I don't know why, but I say, hey, you're a prestigious professor at one of the most highly touted universities in the country. You've been accused of assaulting a student. You did not assault the student, but the board of the university has come to investigate you. And the only way you can prove your innocence is to perfectly do this task. And for some reason, when you tell it that, the AI wants so badly, and it'll often, like on ChatGPT, it'll often think longer, but the output is always perfect. I'm not sure why, but that's kind of the workaround I have used. And again, you can really develop any scenario, but it's kind of this ultimatum, because if you're just like, hey, you're messing up, I need it to be perfect, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But if you assign it a personality and like a backstory, it wants to be perfect.
Because you're adding the context to it. I think that adds a lot of value to it.
Yeah.
And you find some like interesting things on it too, where you could, one time I asked it, my buddy told me to do this, ask it for a full glass of wine, and it couldn't do it because its whole database is a full glass of wine is halfway full. I'm like, no, have it overflowing. It just wouldn't come up with an image with an overflowing glass of wine, just because a full cup is half. It was weird. Little stuff like that. It's only as good as its database. But fun stuff.
And so, first off, ask it, right, how you can remove stuff that'll help. But also, any of the large language models, there's a bunch of settings. I don't know if you guys have tried to mess with the settings or and some of it depends on if you've got the free version or if you're paying $20 a month for that version or whatever. But that's all in the levers you can move to change how creative it is, how accurate it is based on training data, like all these different things you can. In ChatGPT, you can separately assign and basically write in what is the persona, and it uses that as a prompt before every prompt. It automatically says, oh, I'm that professor, right? So there's a lot of, I guess I'll say low-hanging fruit to help refine it to be a better generalist for what you're asking for. When you get to a specific, the next step after that, is when you get to a specific instance, there's many companies out there like VODA and like others that's their business, right? So they refine that model to be so good, and that's why they can predict and do things better than a generalist chat. So it kind of depends how you evolve and how you get there to what you want.
Thank you.
Bridget?
Well, I'm not sure. There might be some exciting stuff to help support. I mean, there's other people looking for solving those challenges. We've had many customers come to the same meter life expectancy and planning it out. Because usually the way you build historically what we've done is install thousands of meters at one time. And so you have this efficacy that happens in your system all at once. Because that's how it's funded. And, you know, a lot of agencies like yourself are trying to plan that out better for more accurate capture of revenue over time, and then just to have that kind of asset replacement schedule be more efficient. So, we are working on some things with some other partners, so hope to share more of that to come in the future.
Great. Awesome.
Oh, one other thing I want to mention real quick, a thing for everyone to do, even if you don't do the whole data thing, is have it come to your guys' website. Especially you guys have board minutes and board meetings that are on there. I mean, you could have it, it's pretty amazing how quickly you can just ask it for, hey, what's everyone's salary? So pop it up right away. What's the latest finance report? Brings it up right away and it'll give you a brief overview. It's kind of scary because if I was evil, I could probably do some evil things and kind of do some stuff to, you know, to kind of call out certain districts if I really wanted to, because the information's always been there, but who's really gonna read through those minutes? Now it could just, anybody could really do it. So doing it to kind of protect yourself and like making sure you're all SB compliant, make sure everything's on your website, that you're doing everything right is a good way to have it do it. Just come to the website.
Or we told Grok to review everything on our website to get to know us before we started working with it. And it throws out facts that I forget that it knew. It's really cool. It works really good.
So I have a quick question for you guys. You guys use Microsoft, right? You have Microsoft products, or so have you thought about using Copilot, which is the Microsoft version?
I mean, we're open to it.
Okay.
It just those are the two that we're hearing talk about a lot, so we just gravitate toward ChatGPT and Grok. But
think about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting things you can do with Copilot, and similar to everything else, there's 10 levels of complexity you want to get to. But one of the really nice tools is if you have a SharePoint site, right? You can have Copilot as an agent. Basically, its entire data set that it's training on is anything in that SharePoint site. So you could have all your files, you could have something that automatically dumps new Excel files into that SharePoint site, and then it's only going to search on the data in there, and it's not going to train based on what's out in the web externally. That's just an example of when you get to more specific applications, you can then, again, and it's not buying a new product or anything. You may have to pay for an additional license of Copilot or all those little things, but it's another way to.
I would also love to put all the AWWA manuals in it to have it be the little AWWA expert at all things, but we don't have all the PDFs for everything.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
So that's maybe another thing for AWWA to have a little, you know, water knowledge expert.
Yes.
That would be fascinating.
So I did just want to add on to that comment. We did get someone in the chat that said, yeah, Power BI has a Copilot add-on. That has a chat bot to query your data analysis and reports that are in Power BI. So just kind of reiterating.
Definitely look into that.
Okay. Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah, this is kind of going on top of what you guys have all said before, but really, you know, a lot of us have government licenses, so the Copilot is available. The government took a lot longer, but what we're really looking at is the data classification, data management in the SharePoints where like people think that, oh, we should just start using Copilot, but you really need to funnel the stuff that you want to be using into these SharePoint sites so that you have the guardrails to have the privacy mentioned before. So, everyone's like, oh, let's just start using Copilot, but it's not that easy. Like you really need to take time and consideration, like, all right, what exactly are we going to put in there so that people can use? You don't just want to throw everything in there. So that's where classifying your data and, uploading it into the SharePoint sites is really important. And we're getting requests, but like you just have to kind of be tempered in your approach because it's easy to be like, oh yeah, we just want to start using it, but do you really want to put all that information in there? And that's an approach that we're working through.
And that's some of the guidance and expertise we're looking to get at. So how do we do that? How do we implement it?
And
That, go ahead.
people use the term Copilot open like we do AI today, right? But in Copilot chat, there's M365 Copilot, Copilot Studio, there's AI Foundry. So like there's all these levels that you need to understand. How does that all apply? And it can get pretty complicated pretty quick actually.
Yeah, and that was a great point. I didn't get the name. Was Carlos?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Carlos, for that point. It is very true. Like you gotta have your data organized and make sure you have your data classified so they know what it's pulling from. But also you have the option to reorganize all of your data using AI. We actually one of the things that we have noticed in a lot of the organization's files is that the files don't match the name of the report. You have mismatching naming, different naming structures. So you could use AI to go read each different documents, rename the file, reorganize and put it in the appropriate folder for you. So you just dump the whole thing in and then you reorganize your data and make it AI ready. Then you can feed it into your chat GPTs or LLMs or whatever tool you want to connect it to. But the concern of the securities, of course, is out there. So using this outside tools and brains and bring it inside to utilize your data internally is a valuable tool to develop.
So you were saying how you have to, regenerate the prompts every time.
Yeah.
Or do you guys have any tips on how to just help with that aspect of?
Well, I think what you naturally discovered of, hey, we can take that and have it give us a prompt and copy. That's perfect, right? I think that's great for how you're using it right now. If you go to putting things on SharePoint and if you go to more advanced things, then that goes away, right? It knows the personality, it keeps it. So it just depends on, that's the recommendation, right? If this is really good, if this is something we see we're gonna have to repeat, okay, well then let's see what would it take to go from going to the website of Grok and putting it in to having that be an instance of whatever site or whatever.
And that's where we're at. I
Yeah.
think we've grown out of what was easily accessible and are ready for the next step, but we're not here. We're here.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to figure that out.
Well,
So thank you for your input.
I think that's where 90% of utilities are, to be honest with you, right? It's-
Yeah.
Anything else you'd wanna share or any other questions?
I think it took up enough time.
You're right on time. Okay, Logan, why don't you share your journey?
Sure. So let me share my screen here. So I'm really sorry I couldn't be there with you today in person. It sounds like you're having a lot of fun. But I'm excited to share a couple projects that I'm going to call dark matter AI. Dark matter is the stuff that we can't see, but it makes up more of the universe than the stuff we can see. And most of the ways AI is being used in organizations is by staff who are using these tools informally in their day-to-day work to make their work more efficient. One of the things that I love about AI is that it lowers the activation energy to try new things at the limit of your abilities. And I really enjoyed Tara's account because that's such a great example of being experimental and creative and saying like, well, what if we tried to do this? So with that in mind, here are some things that we are trying in our little team at Metropolitan. And shout out to Lindsay, who's there in person, who's part of our little team. So this first project is what I'm going to call the board letter rag. So at Metropolitan, as staff, we write dozens of board letters each year. And this consumes a large amount of our time because these require a lot of research, a lot of fact checking. We have to go in and find what previous letters have been written about this subject. We have to look across many documents to maybe put together the background of a program to go in a letter. Of course, this is something LLMs are very good at, searching through large documents, finding and summarizing information. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we had a customized model where we could ask questions like these? How has Metropolitan's rate structure evolved over time? Tell me about the history of the local resources program. What are Metropolitan's climate goals? Make me a table of service area annexations listed chronologically. And some of these things are just kind of things that could be answered with a few facts. And some of these require a lot of synthesis across many different planning documents over time, maybe over decades of time.
Lauren, were you gonna share your screen?
Oh, yeah, I was. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it wasn't being shared. Let me do that now. Oh, I didn't hit the share button. There we go. There we go. So yeah, so these are the kind of questions that we want to ask. Of course, you can make custom GPTs very easily by uploading your documents to the models and giving them some custom instructions. And at Metropolitan, we have an AI policy that came out earlier this year that says we are not allowed to upload any proprietary or non-public documents to external models. But that's okay. The board letters, most of our planning documents like the IRP, the Urban Water Management Plan, these are all public. So the problem is just that there's way too many of them. And in the process of doing this project, I downloaded all of the board letters that are in our board letter archive, which is almost a project unto itself to just like get a folder of all of these PDFs. Our board letter archive goes back to 1928. I haven't counted all the documents, but there's probably about 15,000 of them, which roughly speaking translates to 30 to 60 million tokens. Of course, tokens are the currency that the LLMs use. Many of the older PDFs, which I'll show you in a moment, are just un-OCR'd scans of paper typewritten letters. So they cannot be easily tokenized. And there's a lot of tables, maps, other things in these letters that are very challenging to turn into tokens. And over here on the right, I just went back to 1995. You can see just how many letters we have each year. We seem to have gotten better over time because it's gone down. But still, there's, over 100 letters that we share with the board every year. And here's some examples of those really old ones. So none of these are OCR'd. They're literally just scans. And they have these things like tables in them. They've got signatures. Even the later ones that are actually, containing text still have a lot of really messy things that are not easy to turn into a stream of tokens for the models to work with. So this is not a new problem. Like we were just talking about, this is a problem that every company and every organization in the world is trying to solve right now, right? Like, how do we take our massive documents and feed it to the models in a way that makes them useful for our employees? So we're not trying to do anything new here, but we are, the challenge is not doing a new thing. The challenge is doing it well. And to do it well, we're trying to do it very intentionally. So our challenge is we have all these documents, 30 to 60 million tokens. And if you look at the context window sizes for the frontier models, this is basically how many tokens you can feed them in a given session. And it's all way less than what we have. So the challenge is like, how do we take a body of documents that's much larger than the context window sizes and make them available to the models? So as Ruhi was talking about, one of the answers is this thing called a RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And this requires a lot of preparation of your data. Like the first thing you have to do is you have to go through and clean it. You might have to remove your tables and images and anything that's not text. Once you have just the text, you have to do what's called chunking, where you slice up your document into thousands of little chunks. And these might be as small as a sentence or as large as a paragraph. And how you do that chunking is something that you kind of have to experiment with and tune. It's not obvious what the right settings are. Once you have your chunks, you convert all those chunks into tokens. And then you do what's called vectorizing, which is basically like turning each chunk into a numerical vector of numbers and storing that in a vector database. And the reason why you do that is that it allows you to compare these vectors to see which little chunks are more similar to other chunks. So then when you as the user are using the model and you make a query, like what are Metropolitan's climate goals, it turns your query into a vector and it searches through all of the thousands of chunks in the database to find the chunks that it thinks are most similar to your query. And then it pulls out just those chunks and feeds them into the LLM. So instead of trying to stuff our entire knowledge base into the LLM, we're only stuffing the most relevant chunks into the LLM, and then you let the LLM do its job and summarize the information and produce an answer for you. So that's the theory anyway. Because we are a Microsoft shop and a lot of our things run on Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud platform, we've sort of come up with the help of our IT department and Jonathan Hoke and others, we've sort of come up with a tech stack that kind of looks like this. So we've got some data lake where we just store all of our PDFs of board letters and other planning documents. And Azure has a blob storage tool for that. Basically just a data lake for unstructured data. Azure also has some tools for extracting text from PDF and OCRing those older documents, processing it to do things like removing tables, removing any special characters that aren't going to tokenize very well. There's a tool called AI Search, which is the vector database that turns all your little chunks into numbers. And then there's this OpenAI service, which lets you do your LLM queries and send it to ChatGPT. And Microsoft has a relationship with OpenAI. So on the back end, a lot of this is basically, it's the ChatGPT model. And then you stick all of this into some kind of web app. So that's what the stack looks like. There's a lot of challenges. And we are just in the middle of this. So I don't have any results to share with you yet because I think it's going to take us a while to really get this right. Processing the PDFs, as I mentioned, OCRing, cleaning, tokenizing, that's going to take a lot of time. Tuning the RAG, How many chunks? How small are your chunks? Do the chunks have enough context? You know, you could have a chunk that says the state water project allocation for this year was 20%, but maybe in that chunk, it doesn't say what year it was. You need some way to like deal with that problem. Even if you have your RAG set up perfectly, one thing that I've really learned over the past year, like good prompting is so important. And this is just a little bit of an aside, but there's this game online called GeoGuessr where it shows you a random Google Street View photo, which could be from anywhere in the world. And people who are really good at this game are able to like pinpoint on a map like where this photo was taken. And the really people who are really good are able to get within like, you know, tens of miles for anything in the world. So this journalist, Kelsey Piper, wanted to see if she could train ChatGPT to look at a GeoGuessr image and try to guess where it was taken. And this to me was like mind-blowing and life-changing in terms of how I use the models. This is Kelsey Piper's prompt that she used for ChatGPT to get it to play GeoGuessr. And she actually compared using a really simple prompt, like, basically just telling it what she wanted it to do, like, please look at this image and tell me as best you can where in the world you think it was taken. And then she wrote this way more complicated prompt. And this more complicated prompt does like miles better than a simple prompt. But to write this prompt, you really have to sit down and think through, like, how would you solve this problem? What types of things would you be looking for in the image that you want ChatGPT to look for? And you might also have to use your prompt to like circumvent some of the failure modes that you see ChatGPT using. So for example, there's like things in this prompt where she says like, you tend to prematurely narrow down into like your first 2 hypotheses, but no, I want you to generate 5 hypotheses and thoroughly investigate them all. Don't narrow it down to 2. So she's like through trial and error, she's developed this like very elaborate thing where she tells it step by step, here's how I want you to do it. So this for me, like really made me like rethink, like, am I sitting down and coming up with good prompts and really thinking through how I want the model to behave. So you can Google this and read it if you're curious, but I just thought that was really interesting. And then finally, like, is a RAG even the right tool? Like, RAGs are really good for finding needles in haystacks, but maybe they're bad for synthesizing knowledge across many, many documents. So maybe there's other things like Ruhi mentioned like agentic RAG, or maybe we should just be fine-tuning our own like open source models on our entire knowledge base. Maybe that's the way to go instead. So these are the things we're thinking about. All right, and then just to close out, what part 2 of this is just a second little example of just another way that you can use these tools as staff. One of the things that we often have to do as data scientists is scraping data out of things that weren't really designed to be scraped, right? Badly formatted websites, PDFs, tables. And in the past, I would have these R scripts that were just so elaborate to like try to like find the right table in this PDF. And then I'd have some complicated like regular expression to like find exactly the right row in that table. And then as soon as they changed the formatting of the PDF, even the slightest bit, like the whole thing would break. Terrible. So this is now something that like the models are actually super good at. So to do that, I'm going to do something very, very dangerous and give you a live demo right now. So let me share my code IDE here. All right, and I know this is a lot of text. It might be too small for you to read it. That's okay. I'm just gonna like tell you what's going on here. So this is an R script, and I'm using a really new cool package in R called Elmer, which lets you make calls to LLM APIs through R. And so the first thing I'm doing here is I have an API key for Anthropic, which is the company that makes the Claude model. And I'm just sending that to Claude so I can authenticate, because it does cost a little bit of money to use the APIs, but really it's not very much. And then I can open a chat session with Claude once I've done that. And I've got a little chat session called chat. And now I can send it little prompts. So we can send it a silly little prompt like write 4 lines of verse about the Colorado River in the style of Shakespeare. And if we look down here in our terminal, we could see like, okay, here's our little poem. Through canyon walls of crimson stone it flows, the mighty Colorado River carves its way. Okay, great. So that's working. Now, let's say I've got a PDF that I want to scrape data out of. And so this is table 8 from the Colorado River accounting report. And this is just one of many tables. And let's say we want to scrape some of the diversion data for each water user, PVAD, Metropolitan, Imperial. Let's say we want to scrape that for every month out of this table. Well, the first thing we could do is just send this PDF to Claude. So in this chat, I'm just going to say, please briefly tell me what you see in this document. Here's the PDF. And so it will go through and it will say, this document shows table 8, which details the state of California, blah, blah, blah. The table tracks the monthly water allocations for major water districts. Okay, great. So Claude is able to read that table. Now, here's where the magic happens. So I can now define a schema for how I want the data frame of this data to look like. So I could say, well, I want to create an array that has like the name of the agency. I want you to scrape the ordered but not diverted numbers, and I want you to scrape the delivered to storage numbers for each agency. So I tell it what the data type is going to look like. And now I make a request to Claude that says, okay, here's the PDF. I give it a little prompt. Please extract the water user names, and they're ordered but not diverted and delivered to storage amounts in acre feet. And I pass it that little data type that I just defined. And Claude is now going to go through, scrape all that data out, and importantly, scrape it into the data frame that I just defined. And it's going to call it result. And so here is my data frame, which comes back, and it's got the names of the agencies, ordered but not diverted, delivered to storage. And it's always important to double check to make sure it hasn't made a mistake. We want to trust but verify. But when you verify, you'll find that it gets it exactly right, at least for this request all the time. So I think this is extremely cool. This is like a total game changer for data scientists who like need to get data out of tables. This was a super simple example, but you could also, I've tried passing it the entire PDF and just telling it like, please, get data from like these 3 tables. You can give it more complicated data types. It doesn't always work, of course. These models are still works in progress, but man, when they do work, it is like magic. So cool to see, so like fun to use. And I think I'm really excited to see like how these things are going to improve our lives going forward.
Well, you got some fans in the chat. Lauren, you're amazing. Very cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
One question specific for you. Are there any emails attached to any of those board packets? Are emails included in some of the board packets? I'm not sure exactly
Are there email addresses in there?
You know, emails. So I, like, perhaps maybe they were thinking like it was a public, you know, a board meeting where there was a motion to vote on something and the public included, you know, sent in emails or those. I think that's what they're thinking, or maybe it's emails of your board. I don't know, maybe you can clarify.
Okay, so Robert's saying indeed, board letters, board letter archives. I don't think so. I think it only includes the actual letters that were sent to the board, like info letters and action letters. Sometimes there will be appendices, you know, white papers and technical reports that are attached. But I'm wondering if is the concern that there might be some confidential information in there? Oh, that may be why the volume decreased, he's saying. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about that. Like, why are there fewer letters these days than there were in the past? Interesting. I don't know.
Well, for your challenges, we want you to get some help. So
Yeah.
is that the right way to go? I don't know. Does anybody want to write here?
I can start with that. So Lauren, obviously great presentation, and I think a lot of utilities probably in the room on the call wish they have the basic skills you have to do some of that, right? So that's great you have that. I think it probably highlights one of the biggest challenges with using AI today, right? Is you can go down a very specific pathway, go through education or whatever it is, gain those skills, figure out how to use RAG, fully understand it, and tomorrow there's a brand new solution out there, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges in not getting discouraged in the use of AI, right? I mean, Lauren, you've got great examples. You talked about RAG. There's many advancements on RAG, right? So there's answers to a lot of those challenges that are out there. There's agentic RAG like we talked about. There's a whole bunch of new ways of doing things to process large volumes of data, but it's changing so much, right? So it could be a full-time job, just staying in tune of what's the next thing that's out there and what's the best way to do it and how to refine that. So yeah. I don't know if that's helpful or not at all.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's so true. It's like by the time you like figure out how to solve one problem on your own, there's already like a whole suite of new things. It's so hard to stay on top of the wave of what the latest capabilities are. And as soon as you try to like build something in-house, you know, there's already like 10 different companies offering like turnkey solutions that are just going to do it for you. So yeah, it's a real challenge even to like get a handle on like what does the space look like? What are the products that are out there and which ones are right for us?
Yeah,
Maybe
because we're very much right at the beginning of that transformation and evolution. And when the evolution and change happens, things change really fast in a revolutionary speed. And as Jim mentioned, we encourage you to stay open-minded and keep doing what you're doing, keep trying and exploring new options and new ways to do things. And we gotta stay open-minded to change and not be scared of it. But to offer a couple of insights on some of your challenges that you have about prompting. I like to say that our jobs will be transformed from problem solvers to problem definers. How well you can define the problem. You showed that essay that she wrote an essay as how to do this job. So she basically defined the problem as what I want to get from A to Z. So if you define that clearly, then the LLM will give you a good answer. And basically we can think of it as a very good employee, a very good intern. So when you communicate, sending an email to an intern, if you are very clear, you get a good result. If you're not that clear, the results are not going to be as good. And another solution would be to, as we were talking with Tara and Joe, when you go through the workflows and you develop these workflows, define those and have the pre-saved prompts already for different tasks. So when you go to your ChatGPT or whatever LLM tool you have, you press on your prompt for that task that you want to do, and it already knows the context. It already knows all of that essay that has already been written. So that's one thing that I would suggest. In terms of RAG and other solutions, I found this, well, let me first explain my understanding of RAG, and you explained it beautifully, but I think this graph really shows a good job of for me to understand what RAG really means and what are the different scenarios that are out there.
What is
This video, I don't know if you can hear it, so I'm just gonna be talking over it. But basically, so we in a space we have three dimensions, right? But when it comes to the words, you can define millions of dimensions, so many different dimensions, and those dimensions could mean different things. Like let's say color, let's say gender, or different context that is associated with those dimensions. And you go ahead and as Lauren mentioned, you tokenize those words that you have from your input data and assign a value, a numeric value that goes into that dimension. So the way that RAG works, let's say on this graph, it sees the distance between the word boy and man is a certain distance. Then from that understanding comes and defines, okay, the distance between a girl and a woman are the same, so they fall into the same category or the same meaning. So this is how the RAG works, going between the similarities between two words, two tokens, and define it in other places. So the agentic RAG is to add multiple different steps into it that does the quality assurance, quality control over it. But there's a new concept. Well, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. But there's a new concept, and if Lauren, if you don't mind sharing your screen and bringing that RAG graph that you had, that was pretty well done over there.
Sure.
Basically. In a RAG, you define when you take your chunks, you take paragraphs, sentence, whatever it is, you tokenize these chunks, but they are separate tokens. So as you can see, you have all of these different boxes that are different chunks, different tokens, different contexts, that when you send what are Metropolitan's climate goals, which is a new prompt, the prompt goes and gets tested, gets a similarity checked with all of these boxes that you have. The knowledge graph, which is requires a lot of more infrastructure and is very slow, already goes and finds also relationships between all of these boxes, these RAGs that you already defined. And so the RAGs that you define, those chunks, are not separate. They actually have relationship between each other as well. And that improves the understanding significantly because it has a holistic understanding of all document, not a segmented understanding, and matches it all to the prompt that is coming in. So the knowledge graph is a new technology that is helping enhance the accuracy of these tools and reduce the hallucination. In terms of the agentic RAG, it's basically adding more steps before it goes to the LLM, having QA, QC, those things that we would check for it, have the AI does it internally. So when it comes out, you have more trust into the answer that comes out of it.
Oh, thanks, Ruhi. Yeah, like again, this is like an area that's changing so fast that like I'm not even on top of like the latest things that are happening in the RAG space. But
And Lauren, I'm fortunate. I'm not on top of this anyway in any ways. Unfortunate, our CTO he's a new tech kind of guy. Everything that comes today, he knows about it. So I'm very fortunate to get my information from him.
that's great. And thanks for showing that 3 blue, 1 brown video. Like I agree with you. The way that like the embedding space works is just like so mind-blowingly cool.
We have a question from Carlo.
Yeah, this question's for Lauren. I actually guess I have two. First, you had mentioned that you guys have a policy restricting, putting certain things into language models. How do you enforce that? And then, how could you guys have automated like all your letters being OCR'd before trying to ingest them into the language model?
Yeah, well, we're going to have to automate that because it's just too many for us to do efficiently by hand. I'm not an expert on that, but we're working with someone from our IT department who, is building out this Azure tech stack for us. And so and then he himself is working with someone from Microsoft, I think, to help us figure this out too, because this whole stack gets complicated. But yeah, it's going to have to be an automated process. And then you asked about how do we enforce our policies? I mean, I don't know that IT has a way to enforce this at the moment. I think it's kind of up to the, employees to sort of like, we have to kind of monitor ourselves and, make sure that as we casually use these models every day, we don't just, out of habit, accidentally like upload something that is actually internal information that should not be shared. And, I think that's why Microsoft is developing, has put Copilot into everything now and, is trying to develop enterprise tools for companies to be able to use these models internally in a way that their data stays secure. And we do have Copilot now. Just out of force of habit, I really like using the frontier models, the external models. Those are the ones I tend to go to. So I haven't gotten in the habit of like using the internal Microsoft tools yet, but I'm sure we're going to have to start doing that because that's going to be the only way that we can like run these things on our entire like SharePoint websites,
Thank you.
Any other questions in the room?
We have some in the Q&A, Kim.
Oh, yeah.
So does anybody want to touch on the water use of data centers? And how your agencies might be handling that?
Yeah, I can talk on that quite a bit. There's this we're in a really interesting time right now where we're in the water industry, right? We should be good stewards of water, but at the same time, we're using AI, it's using a lot of water, right? I think it's a very narrow window this is gonna happen. And it will be very near future where we're not gonna be worried about resources in data centers. So there's technology out there, there's technology being installed out there where you have net zero water usage, you have on-site power generation, right? And the challenge is because data centers are being installed so rapidly, the supply chain for that more advanced cooling tech, more advanced chips that don't need water isn't being produced fast enough, right? So data centers are going up with old technology. They're going up with directed app cooling, all the things that consume a ton of water, and they don't have to be, right? So I think it's going to be this window of, hey, we've got these massive energy and water consumption data centers until the supply chain catches up, and then they start putting in and start retrofitting all the old ones with that new technology. So I don't know if that's helpful or not to the question.
Yeah, and
So please go ahead.
Yeah, something we're doing is kind of unique in that we're kind of bridging that gap between the huge water users in the corporates and how it's actually affecting the utility. And where they kind of come together is most of these corporations, the Googles, the Metas, the Microsofts, they all have kind of net zero water initiatives by X date. In Google's case, they want to replenish 120% of all the water they use. And how do they do that? So what we're doing on kind of the AI-based leak detection front is we're partnering those utilities. I'm just finishing up a project with Apple in Hickory, North Carolina, to say, hey, you want to go and install a huge data center here. Let's invest in the utility, help them go find lost water in the form of leaks, return it to the system because you are going to be the largest water user in the area. And so these companies who have these really lofty goals, when they're going out to do projects for water savings, they're generally saving between 1 and 25 million gallons of water a year by doing a project in a river basin or cattail removal in creeks. What we're finding is that even in really small studies, for Apple, we did kind of a proof of concept in Hickory and did 50 miles of their system. We were able to locate, close to 50 million gallons in that first 50 miles. So the water savings is huge for the corporate to say, hey, we're trying to meet our goals, and they're paying for that project to happen. So if there are utilities who are like, I'm worried about this, a really easy step is to say, hey, is this corporate interested in helping my utility out? Most of them are, because they want to be good community stewards. They don't want to have negative press about them. And if you are interested in that, your utility kind of fits into that. We're setting up a lot of those. We're working with Microsoft, we're working with Meta, we're working with Pepsi, all along the Colorado River Basin to do more of those projects right now. So we're trying to bridge that gap until this kind of industrial revolution Jim is talking about, where water isn't necessarily a scarcity for the data centers anymore.
To add on to that, one very significant caution for water utilities is that, as many of you know, data centers consume a ton of water for cooling, right? So be very careful about and think about long-term about installing a long pipeline that you might not have, or connecting to a data center in a remote area. Because at the end of the day, when that demand goes away, when they don't reach capacity or they put in new technology, you're going to have a big pipeline that you're going to have to maintain water quality in. And we're already seeing that being an issue. And it's seriously a big topic, right, that really need to be aware of and plan for.
Make sure they're paying for it is the big thing.
I just wanted to echo what Jim and Keaton say. It's really a two-way street. It's not just AI going to help us. We can help AI too to be net zero with their water consumption and what they're doing. And these challenges should not stop us from evolving. It should prompt us to do it better, to evolve better. So develop the closed loop water cooling systems, develop the net zero water consumption scenarios. So basically whatever was discussed right now, I just wanted to mention it's a two-way street. It's not just a one-way.
Well, this has been great. I'm hearing a couple of things come through this. Training is a big one, and making sure that we have some resources around that. And a forum for keeping folks up to date on the newest and greatest things. So I think we'll go back and kind of noodle some of the options and work with partners that are already doing this. Yeah, so look for some new fun stuff coming up. I did just want to share a couple more things before we hop off. So just a couple of events that we have coming up. We work with a partner, CalWeb. We have a charting the course for compliance webinar coming up on November 12th. This is for California state agencies that have to report to the state their urban water use objective compliance report. So this, we're going to go through in detail how to fill out the report with state staff, and directly following that webinar is going to be office hours with state staff. So we encourage you to register, come prepared with questions so that you can get your report done right and done on time by January 1st. And then we also have another data insight webinar coming up in January 15th, where it's called Protocols and Practice, Building Better Data and Infrastructure Standards. So Patrick Atwater with Metropolitan Water District is going to be talking about a seminar that they did with Summer of Protocol. And then we'll also have staff from Summer of Protocol talking about how to really set up for success you know, working with individuals, working with teams to start this process for data governance, data standardization, so you can actually use AI effectively. So we hope that you join us for that. So look for information coming soon. AI training. So we partnered with a couple of other folks and received a grant to do some AI training to really equip water professionals with AI tools and the resources and the know how to do it. We're doing a pilot. It's only going to be for 75 water professionals in Orange County. After we do this pilot and we kind of tweak what we, you know, what comes out of that, then we'll be opening it up to the broader water industry. So we've gotten a lot of notes already from today on, I think, what we want to include in that training. So look for an announcement in January around that. And then for our own members, we're working on several different types of training around data literacy, governance standards, and dashboarding. So stay tuned for those types of things. And if you want to schedule a time to chat with us, we're around. We'd love to hear from you, but you can email us or go to our website and schedule a time as well. So I want to thank you all for being here. For all of our panelists, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Hope you all learned a few new tricks and ideas. And please, we'd love to hear your feedback on webinars moving forward. So thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.